Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. We've got Jake Marketo dropping back on the podcast with us today, but we've also got a new guest, Riley from Green Palm Sports. Riley, we were sort of talking pre-recording, bro, a bit fresh into the podcasting game and doing it for a couple of months. How have you sort of found the space?
Yeah, it's been fun. I've seen a lot more than what I originally thought when first coming into it. There's plenty of people doing it. Your retired players, but then also a lot of people just finding a way into the market and producing some pretty quality things, whether that's from a comedian side or just a fact and history kind of side to it. So it's been fun, and it's been fun actually finding the NRL community as well in this space.
Yeah, the community's unreal. Like, I sort of didn't think too much of it, and especially when I started back in 2021, late 2021, and back then there was nothing. There wasn't a lot at all. It was probably myself, Clarkey, Gurus, a few other super coach stuff, but that was about it. And what the community's sort of grown into now has been unreal to sort of witness and watch, and I think you'll have a lot of fun, especially when they start to a couple of events, especially if you're going to be in and around the Sydney area. It's going to be It's a really, really fun and cool community. Jakey, how are you, brother?
Mate, I'm well. I'm looking forward to this today. I really I had a good probably 30, 35 minutes of putting my list together, and I did my best to try and, I suppose, validate some of my spots. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and the views you guys have also.
It's going to be such a fun potty. It's going to be interesting as well because I mean, Jake, we were talking about it pre-recording, bro, just how difficult this actually is, going from, as you were saying, sort of like 5 to 13.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where we're going to struggle the most, but I'm excited for it. I'm really keen to see where our thought process is around a bunch of teams and I guess how much we agree too. So, look, we'll get stuck right in. We'll start off with the Penny Panthers. Riley, I'll start with you first, mate. Being your Big LEZ'S League podcast debut, what are you thinking about the Panthers this year? Where do you see them bracket-wise?
Well, to start off with, I have them straight back to the top, bouncing back hard and just having that little bit of a rest at the end of the season. They don't have to go all the way this year. A little bit of a reset for them, kind of, for their standards at least, but I've got them straight back at the top, winning the minor premiership.
Ooh.
I like it. I don't know. I look at them. I look at their young side as well. It's good, I guess, the second year going. A couple of these guys in there are going to have that second year. Blaze Talungi in particular, your Casey McLean's that was on fire. Jakey, are you sort of in the same boat? Do you reckon top 4 for Penrith, or do you reckon it's going to be maybe closer to around that 5th to 8th bracket?
I've got them in 5th to 8th, to be honest. I think this is the year maybe it starts to fall a little bit off. Not culture-wise, great culture. I do see him playing finals barring injuries. Great point, Riley. The rest will be outstanding for him because they've played a lot of footy the past 5 or 6 years. I just see him in that 5 to 8 bracket just because I think they've lost a lot from their squad. Could be wrong, but I definitely see him playing finals.
And Jake, you look at a bunch of the other sides as well, particularly those sides that are going to be shaping up to go into the top 4, which we'll get to later on. Do you feel like Penrith have sort of fallen back in the pack a little bit in regards to strength of roster?
I do. And the big one for me, strike. Now, McLean, the centre, I think he's going to come out all guns blazing, but I think they're lacking strike all over the park and not as consistent all over the park as some of the other teams that I have in my top 4.
Yeah, look, I do tend to agree. I think we'll do a bit of a majority rules on this one. I'm sort of sitting around the 5th to 8th bracket as well. I think that the start of the year, the draw, their first couple of games are gnarly. They've got, I think, majority of the top 8 in their first couple of games, definitely in their first 4 games. So it's going to be a really tough draw. I think it could hurt their confidence a little bit too if they go out and they don't win majority of their games to start the year. They did have a little bit of a drop-off at last year at one point as well, more so earlier in the season. obviously getting the spoon halfway through the year and having to work their way back up. So just with the draw this year being even harder than last year, I do think we might see a slow start, but I do see them in the top 8, and I do see them being as competitive as we've seen in years past come September. So we'll throw them in the 5th to 8 bracket for now. Let's touch on the Sharks. Jakey, I'll start with you this time.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the Sharkies this year? Do you think that they're at a benefit at the fact that they've gotten further and further every single year, progressing through finals? That not much is changing with this side. What are your sort of thoughts on the Sharks going into this year?
I think they're going to sit in the 1 to 4 bracket. I think the last season, like having Adafenua Blake being added to their roster last year, is only going to bring even more confidence this year. And it gives that core group, obviously last year, another season, and then it going into this season. Now, if they can all stay healthy, I see them as a major premiership threat. They've got some blokes there who are fighting for contracts to stay at the club or earn another position in the top 30 at other clubs. That spurs rugby league players on. Once you're in that contract year and you got to earn your right to be back at the club, you shift a gear, you find something, you start training a little bit harder, your preseason goes up different kinds of levels through your weights and your training. So individually, there's a lot of guys there with a point to prove. And I think as a club, they really want to get into that GF. So I've got them in the 1 to 4. And I think Adafenua Blake is going to come out all guns blazing, leading the way again.
Riley, what are your thoughts, brother? Are you in the same sort of thought mind?
I'm a little bit different. I agree with the contract talks, and that's definitely a motivating factor for this group. But you kind of touched on it earlier, Les. There hasn't been a lot that's changed. Not that you necessarily need a huge amount of ins or outs to improve, but I kind of think that's a little bit deflating for this playing group, how they consistently get into the finals and then they're either one and done or they only make it so far. And I just think they're lacking a little bit of control in their spine positions. We'll see what happens. We obviously know the talks that always seem to arise with Nico in particular when he's out of form about position and whatnot. I just don't know where that next step comes from them. Just whoever's going to take control in the halves. They do have a good forward pack, but it kind of lacks a little bit of punch against those quality sides. So I still see them in that 5 to 8 region making finals because they still went pretty far last year and they didn't lose too much to really have that big of a drop-off for this coming season. But that next step up with a few of these teams, Sharks being one of them, I just don't see where that comes from.
Riley, I do tend to agree when you're talking about the forward pack and lacking a little bit of punch, but I sort of think they combat that a little bit with their defence. Like when you look at their D, especially last year and towards the back end of the year, the game against Melbourne in particular, their defence was unbelievable, and they were sort of matching the similar intensity to Melbourne as well in that final game, and they nearly won it too. They were very, very close to getting the W in that one. So I don't know. I also feel like the fact that not a lot has changed is almost a positive because you're looking at a bunch of sides that are changing quite a bit, new halves pairings and whatnot. A lot of the sides in the top 8 in particular, I feel as though that the fact that there isn't much changing for the Sharks, similar to Penrith, is going to be only a positive for them. So I'd almost say, I'd agree with you, Jake. I reckon 1 to 4. And
Can I jump? Sorry.
Yeah, go.
Can I jump on the back of that? What you're saying? Them being together now, I think this will be for that core group, the 4th or 5th season. Adding Adam now into his 2nd season, I see it as a massive benefit. That's what I just wanted to inject in there also. It's huge.
Jake, do you reckon that Will Kennedy's a good enough fullback for them to win a comp? I
do. The thing is with Will Kennedy is he's underrated and they keep speaking about him, which I think lights the fire in him. I think he's great at backing up, can ball play, and I think something that goes unnoticed with him, defensively, he actually is strong and he always has the right numbers for the defensive line on their try line. That's what, you just said then their defence against Melbourne that game. If you go back and watch, I guarantee Will Kennedy had the right numbers at the right time, very vocal at the back. I think he's a massive player for that team.
What about you, Riley? Do you think that Will Kennedy's a good enough fullback for them to win a comp this year?
I think he's in that second tier of fullbacks. I think he's definitely good enough to win a comp with the class that's surrounded him. And to be honest, even if he was to come off contract and move to a different club, I don't see another player better than him to be able to replace him. So I think he's actually quite quality in all aspects of the position. So I think he's definitely good enough to continue to re-sign whilst they have this playing group.
Jake, I completely agree with what you were sort of saying in regards to the comms, especially in defense, but also he just finishes things off so well. Like just their end of sets, and particularly when try-scoring situations, he's really, really good at just finishing off that play. He's relatively safe. Like they talk about Dylan Edwards as probably the safest fullback in the comp, but I almost feel like Will Kennedy's really up there. In regards to more of an attacking aspect of the game, obviously under the high ball, Dylan Edwards much safer. But just in regards to finishing off plays, you know what you're going to get out of Will Kennedy week to week from an attacking standpoint. So I agree. I think he is good enough for them to win a comp this year, and I would probably throw them in that 1 to 4 bracket. I'm going to keep them there for now. Guys, I guess a team that for me at least is on probably the other end of the table, and I've got a big call coming for the Cowboys. Riley, we'll start with you, brother. What are you thinking for the Cowboys this year?
I'm thinking we're going to see a little bit of a repeat season for them. They obviously have the talent. They have quality in their half, particularly Tom did. And Tom Payton seemed to be on the hot seats this season, and we'll see how they start in the first half. He could be on the out if they don't perform well up front. They do seem to have I think it's the first 3 games that they should win. So we'll see how they perform, but I think they're kind of just in that mode where they don't necessarily get up for the big games, and Tommy Dearden can only do so much, and then Ruben Cotter floats between, front row, lock, second row. Their bench is, it's okay. I don't see them making that 8, and I have them finishing, around that 12th, 13th spot.
Jake, I want to get your opinion on this because you made Riley, you made a good point on Cotter. Jake, what do you think is his best position? And for me, I think it's almost edge, but I think that their forward pack at the Cowboys isn't good enough for him to play edge. Are you in a similar sort of boat?
Yeah, I do. I've watched him when he's played Origin on the edge. I don't think he's an edge player. He's that guy that sets the tone in the middle, great leg speed, gets in between plays and create that momentum and quick play the ball. He is a middle player. The only thing that sort of hurts the Cowboys is that puts Big Jason into the front row. Now, I know people might think, it's the same thing, but everyone forgets Jason Taumalolo was the greatest middle for close to 8 or 9 years, in my opinion. Like, you look at him from like 2012, maybe not that long, maybe 2011 all the way to about 2017, 2018. He's unstoppable. He was the 4-pack with them. You know what I mean? Him and James Tamau, the 1-2 punch for the Cowboys. I think just to let Jason finish his career, you give him that 13 back and you may get something out of him, because a number does mean something to players. And I think if you just have Cotter in the middle there running off the back of Taumalolo bending the line backwards, that will bring energy, in my opinion, and it may be a different mindset from Big Jason.
Yeah, look, I think that's definitely an option for them. I almost feel like, though, Jason's at that point in his career, and sort of some of the games that we saw last year in particular, him off the bench, I really like. I just feel like you can get guys like Cotter and some of your older guys, your Griffin Neems, your Cohen Hesses, to take the sting out of the game. And then Jason Taumalolo can come on around tired forwards. He can have 20-minute stints and just go berserk. So I almost feel like that's probably where I'd sort of play Taumalolo, but I can certainly see an argument for what you're saying and giving him that 13 jersey back and letting him have that role. Boys, I've got a big call about the Cowboys. I want to hear your thoughts. I reckon they're going to win the spoon this year. I think they're the spoon side.
I second that. I've got them written down as 17th, but my reasoning is, as what Riley said, they've got a squad there. They've got a great bunch of young backs, Dearden obviously, and a tough bunch of forwards. But my question is, can Payton get them going, and do they actually trust what he's trying to produce out of them? Because last year it didn't look like at times they were buying into what was put in front of them. They did have a massive year. Dearden had a massive Origin series. I think they would have taken a little bit out of him. But the question is to be asked, if they start slow, does Todd Payten lose his job early in the year?
I think he's probably the most under pressure out of all of the coaches, for sure. I think him and Seabold will definitely be watchers to start the year. I think that Todd, though, is definitely under more pressure. I'll tell you what, his coaching career at the Cowboys has probably been one of the more strange coaching careers, because you've got him getting, fifth, then they've gone to like 13th, and they've sort of just fluctuated between being in the top amount of sides with the talent and strength of their roster, and then just not. And I feel like they're almost doing them a disservice as well with the way that they're structuring their team. Like if Purdue plays halfback this year, I just don't understand. A great player, and I think when you're looking at retention of a talented guy like Purdue, you want to give him a key role in the side.
Yeah.
I'd almost be giving him the fullback jersey, though, and putting Drinkwater into the halves. That's sort of where I'd be, rather than throwing Purdue into that position, to the 7 jersey, and putting all of that pressure on him. I think fullback suits him so much better with how he runs the footy. You can have him floating on both sides. What would be your best, Riley? I'll start with you, mate. What would be your best 1-6-7 for the Cowboys for this year? How would you do it if you were Todd Payten in his shoes?
Yeah, I don't mind putting Purdue at 1. We've seen the talent there. He's got the speed. He can break through line. Drinkwater obviously has played 6 many times before, and he can perform there. And I'm sure that combination with Drinkwater and Dearden would likely be quite healthy and probably pretty damaging at times. They also have Jake Clifford there. He's, a good half, a solid half if they need to keep Purdue in that back line. You just don't know. They could finish bottom of the ladder. You wouldn't be surprised. They could fight like hell with all the pressure and finish 9th. So they're kind of one of those teams that, there's a group of them that could finish at the top of the end or the bottom of the end. But that Purdue at 1, I think that might create a bit of excitement around the club, and it just shows that they would actually be trying to do different things and trying to win with this group and this coach.
100%. I almost feel like they need a great point on Clifford. I almost feel like they need him in there for the kicking game, because you look at their spine at the moment, pretty much all of their spine, their key part of their game, other than probably Reed Marnie, would be the running game. Obviously, Purdue, really good runner. Dearden, probably one of the game's best running halves. You've obviously got Drinkwater at the back there. While he's pretty silky and really good finishing-wise, his best part of his game, for the most part, is the running game. So I just feel like they need a bit of a point of difference. They need someone that's going to run the side. They can't really back their attack. They're not the Gold Coast Titans. They can't just fully back their attack as their strongest part of their game. And it almost contradicts what Todd Payten's been trying to do. Like, Todd Payten's been very vocal on trying to make this side a defensive team. And now you're building a side with the preface of attack, like a full-on preface on the attack. So it sort of contradicts exactly what they've been trying to build. You in the same sort of thought process there, Jake?
Yeah, mate. I would leave Drinkwater at fullback. As we all agree, great attacker. I think defensive low in that front line for the Cowboys, it may be a bit of an area of worry. I don't think he's that confident in his defensive abilities. Attack-wise, though, he would bring a lot, but I think leave him at fullback. And you know what? As we're all talking about them, they need to win. Put the young fella at 6, have Dearden at 7, and just apply all the pressure to him and see if he hardens and kicks it for him. Because I think having Dearden, Purdue, and Drinkwater as those 3, there's a lot of speed. Dearden gives him that direction. He can take the line on. You got those 2 backing up if he does make a break. And I think if Drinkwater can sort of put himself around the play of the ball, as soon as there's a bit of momentum from the boppers from the Cowboys, Mahoney's going to take off. So he needs to be in and around the ruck. And I think Purdue, if he can just be told, mate, these are your 3 things you need to do week in, week out for us to be successful and you to be a great 6, let him do it and give him those 10 rounds to be able to produce. I think they'll be better in the long run, in my opinion.
For sure. I mean, they've definitely got the attacking structures of being a great side and obviously finishing high up on the ladder. I think, Riley, as you were sort of alluding to there, but I feel like that what's going to let them down and what's going to probably get them in this position to the spoon is their D. Their defense, particularly at the start of last year, was pretty awful. It's particularly on their left-hand side. So hopefully they can sort of change that around. We'll move on because we don't want to spend the whole potty on the Cows as much as we could. Let's go to the Parramatta Eels, probably one of the more exciting sides on this list. I sort of see them as a top 4 side. I don't know if you agree, Jakey. What are your thoughts on Parramatta?
Mate, this was one of the teams I had to flip a coin for. Like, as I said before, I think like spots 4 and 5 all the way down to 15, it's a flip of a coin. I've got the Eels, right, in the 9 to 12 category. And the reason I say that is, even though I love Pizzette and he's there, he's only there for the year. You know, Moses is coming back. He's going to fire. But those calf injuries, mate, they have the tendency to just sort of pop up out of nowhere. You know, Lomax is a big loss for Parramatta, regardless of what's being said in the media. He's a big out for them. You know, and Kelly coming in gives them that strike, but he's, in my opinion, he's not a Zach Lomax, you know. So it's going to be tough for the Eels. Are they a finals bound team? They can be. But as I stated before, they're a flip of the coin for me to with some of the other teams I have in 5 to 8. So can they play finals? 100%. But I've got them in my 9 to 12 because I just think my 5 to 8 is sort of a little bit hard to break at the moment.
Well, look, I've come in and I've broken it, mate. I've got them in the top 4. I've got them in the top 4. I really like where they're looking. I think that they've built a really strong foundation from last year. The back end of last year probably says a lot for me, the way that they were playing, quick play the balls, leading the comp in offloads. They look like an exciting team. And I almost look at Pezzett as pretty much a clone of Moses, but on the left-hand side, like really good runner of the footy. Obviously looking at a couple of his junior games as well, really, really good runner, which we haven't sort of seen a lot of. But what we have seen is his kicking game. His kicking game is phenomenal. I think that if they can get the best out of him and Moses, have 2 genuine options there for kicks on last, have that unpredictability about where they're going to go. Both of them are great runners, so both of them could take short side raids on last as well. You've got Iongi, you've got Talon De Silva learning there at the 9, along with Riley Smith. They've got a really good young team, but what I'm more excited, and Riley, I want to get your thoughts on this as well, is the forward pack that they've got there that suits that fast style of footy. I think that they're probably one of the more exciting teams to watch this year. What are your thoughts, Riley? Where do you see them?
Yeah, well, I'm along the same lines as Jakey. I've got them in that 9 to 12 region. You're right, they did finish the back end of last season quite well and gives the fans something to hold on to, as they haven't had too much over the last couple of seasons. The forward pack, the big one for me would be the inclusion of Jack DeBellin. I think
massive.
Defensively, he's rock solid, and he's going to bring a ton of experience and leadership to a group where you've got a mix, like Hopgood, great defensive player, but he's not a big enough body in that front row to match alongside Junior Paulo. So DeBellin will be a key inclusion should he stay healthy, but I just don't see. I think they're a little bit overhyped. You know, Pezzett is good. He's from the Storm. You all know what you get from the Storm, quality on and off the field. But the other thing is that there's so much noise around this club at the moment and this team. We'll see whether they're the type of team to be able to drown that out and just play their football. But there's so much noise with the inclusion of Pezzett, the Lomax stuff going on. I just have them in that 9 to 12, and I just think that there's not enough for them. It's a little bit like for like with their inclusions. I just don't think there's enough to push them into the top 8.
I agree with what both of you guys have said in regards to Lomax. I feel like that off-field drama to start the year isn't great, and it does take a lot of the focus away from the footy, which I think could be a little bit of a risk as well. And that's the risk that Parramatta are choosing to run, right? Because they want a player in return. They want someone back. They want that exchange of value. So, look, we'll have to wait and see if Parramatta do get someone in return, and that could obviously add to the discussion that we're having now. But it does seem to be quite a big off-field distraction. And a lot of the boys that are still mates with Lomax as well, you know, watching this all unfold, the club and the stance that they're taking, I think it's a great thing for the surrounding clubs, because they're looking at this, they're looking at Parramatta putting the foot down and and taking a strong stance, and they love it. But from what it looks like in the top 30, or what it could look like in the top 30, they'd be looking at that as much more of a distraction. What's the club doing? What's going to happen? Is someone else going to come in? Why is the focus being drawn to someone that doesn't want to be in and around this building and what we're building? I think that definitely seems to be a bit of a distraction. Is that sort of the thought process you're sort of going down there, Jakey?
Mate, it can be, but I think they've got a great leader there in Jason Rolls. If you look back at Rolls, his first year in the first grade last year, he got hit with 15,000 curveballs in the first 10 rounds. Took it in his stride, and mate, by the back end of the year, they were gaining some real momentum. It was hard for me to put him in 9, but what I want to elaborate is they've got points. It's if they can gather momentum to be able to shift the ball, right? They've got strike either side. Their halves are great. And as you said, their 9s are going to be able to build into the game and only going to get better. The biggest thing for them is they've got forwards that can ball play and create an offload. But I think they just, besides Big Bolo, they're missing that punch to just go through, bend the line backwards and get a quick play of the ball for them. If they can get a player in there, or someone comes out of nowhere and begins to do that for them, as well as with Big Junior, then we may have our foot in that. I may have my foot in my mouth.
All right. We'll leave it there. I'm going to throw them into that 9 to 12 bracket. We'll go to Melbourne. Obviously, it's almost like a little bit of a Star Wars battle. It seems like Parramatta are like the rebels, and this is like this is like Darth Vader and these sort of guys here.
The resistance and the force.
What are our thoughts on Melbourne, Riley? I'll start with you, mate. Do you think it's sort of similar to Penrith, or what we could have and should have probably seen with Penrith in regards to that fatigue? They've been to 2 back-to-back grand finals now. A lot of these boys, particularly their star players, have played for Australia as well in internationals. Do we start to see a little bit of that fatigue setting in, or do you think Melbourne's just too professional of a system to allow that to happen?
I think you could definitely see a little bit of a backwards step. You're right, a little bit of fatigue, back-to-back GFs. But the word you use there is probably the key one, professional. It's been the mantra at Melbourne for 2 decades. Craig Bellamy is he's just going to do what he always does, and that club's always been next man up. So with the key losses of Pappenhausen and then Eli Katoa in the middle, they do lack some class, some talent and some ball skills for their attack, but Melbourne are just too good, too well run, too well coached, too good of a junior system as well to really count them out. So I've still got them just scraping into that top 4 at 4, but I could definitely see a little bit of a backward step, and maybe it takes 5-6 rounds to kind of get this thing rolling.
I tend to agree. I also think the loss of Pappy at the back there is probably a big one that a lot of people are sort of glossing over. I think that his style of play, even though that he was out for majority of the season anyway last year and has been for quite a while with injury, I just feel like his best, he is just an absolute weapon there at the back. His speed, X factor, just changing the game a little bit there at fullback, just being that smaller body, but having the power and having the speed to obviously do well there at fullback. Falongo obviously comes in, a little bit of inexperience. Jakey, what are your thoughts on young Falongo? I know we spoke about him a little bit when we talked about Lomax on the podcast the other week. But do you think losing Pappenhausen, losing even Nelson, who was, I guess, a key guy in that pack and, a real good leader, I guess, around their system, do you think that these losses could hurt Melbourne a little bit? Or do you think, again, they're just too professional of an organisation?
Mate, I've got them in the 5 to 8 bracket. They've got the best culture in the competition. They've shown that for almost 3 decades now. So culture will keep them alive. I think Farlongo coming in at fullback will be outstanding for them, but I don't see them having yet replaced a Pappenhausen or a Sofa Solomona, in my opinion. Hetherington's gone down there, which is a good pickup for him, and I hope he fires. I reckon he's a great middle forward. I don't know where they're actually going to play. They were talking about playing him on the edge, but I see him as a middle forward. But it's going to be interesting to see if they can get Zach. Now, Zach in that team adds a different dynamic, in my opinion. But I think if you look at Melbourne, right, once they get to the finals, because they will, it's a different ball game for them. But I just see them sitting in that 5 to 8 due to the fact of those losses. Now, Pappenhausen's a seasoned fullback, Clive Churchill winner, and been a mainstay for them and has built so much resilience through his injuries. And then Asafa Solomona sort of took over the leading role when Bromwich left there. And it was unfortunate some of the suspensions he did cop because the Melbourne Storm did go back-to-back grand finals without him. Now, if he plays, I'm not saying they're going to win, but I tell you what, he adds a lot of weight to them going along the way to get the W in those 2 grand finals. So I think Melbourne will hit their straps at some stage. They may get a Zach Lomax in their team, but I think if they can get someone, the big fella they got from the Tigers to go there last year, if he can go to another level, maybe he takes over that role for Big Nelson, but they're big shoulders and big shoes to fill with that, with bigger Sofa Solomon not there at the moment.
I really like how they've brought in some young guys like Trent Toilau as well from Penrith, who's really, really good. Actually came through that Melbourne system. He's returning there after being at the Penrith Panthers for a while. He's a halfback. Can obviously play a little bit of 9 as well. They got him. They've also got Jack Hetherington, which I really like. And a lot of people will look at that signing and go, what are Melbourne thinking? This guy is a bit of a nutcase, and we've seen some off-field stuff with him and on-field stuff as well. But I just think in regards to getting like for like and pretty much just replace, I honestly think Jack Hetherington, when you're looking at him as a replacement for Nelson, I think it's almost like for like. They are both real big bullies through the middle. They've got a little bit of a wild side to them, but they will just go to war with anyone they go up against. I think in that Melbourne system, Jack Hetherington's a guy that I really like. I also like Big Davey Mawali too. That he's got from South. I just feel like in regards to replacing what they've lost, they've seemed to have done that really well, but also really under the radar. And I think in previous seasons when we previewed Melbourne, I think my big criticism of them at least has been their forward pack. But I almost think that they've done extremely well in getting around what could be a really nice forward pack, especially with a little bit like losses in and around the spine. They've still got creative guys there. They've got Hughes, they've got Grant, they've got Munster. But now they've also got a really loose forward pack that is tough as nails, that will go to war with any side they go up against. Jakey, I'll get your thoughts on this first. Mate, the forward pack looks quite solid compared to obviously last year even.
It's balanced. It's a balanced forward pack. I think Katoa's a big out. But my question is, these younger players that have come in, or not younger, but blokes that have come from other clubs, have they got the ability to play like Melbourne Storm play, like seasoned Melbourne Storm players for the whole season? Now, they've come from clubs where they've started and sort of been impact players also. So my question is, do these two blokes take up that front rower spot that's sort of been left open and add to it? Or do you think they'll come out of a cannon and the way the Storm are, the way they train and the way they play, they may not be used to that, and that may be a bit detrimental to those types of players if the Storm and Craig Bellamy may not, may already be on top of that and thinking about switching players in and out at certain parts of the season. I'm not sure how they'll do it, but to me, like Asafa Solomon is an international hardened front rower. That's a very, very big in for any team to have that sort of player in their team. And when they've gone and they've tried to fill it with 2 or 3 players, but they're 2 or 3 players that, in my opinion, aren't as proven as Nelson Asafa Solomon.
Yeah, I do agree. They're probably definitely not as proven, but what they have got on their side is the fact that they can work, not so much David Mawali because he's going to Manly next year, but certainly for a Hetherington, if they can extend him a couple of years, if he does go well and he does kill it in the preseason, which I've been hearing he has. But also guys like they've already had in that system, and your Lazarus Valep, who's your Atavalo Lasardis, these sort of guys, if they can get the absolute best out of them, I think that they will definitely really benefit from and cherish the hard work that those guys will put in, and it could work in their favour really nicely. Riley, we'll move on to the Roosters. I think that me and Jakey did say 5 to 8 there for Melbourne, so we'll keep them there for now. But for the Roosters, mate, very exciting team. I guess the only question that I'd have over the Roosters when it comes to if they're going to be a top 8 side is how much of a backward step is DCE going to take. And if he does take it back, even if he does take a backward seat, you've got Watson there at 13, you've got DCE, you've got Sam Walker, you've got James Tedesco at the back. Riley, is there too many chefs in the kitchen at the Sydney Roosters?
I don't think so. I think they've got massive upside, and I think Robbo will have them all playing their own role to give them the best opportunity to win games. I do think DCE is mature enough, and he's got the self-awareness to know what stage of his career that he's in, and then opposite that, the stage of where Sam Walker is in his career, and how much the Roosters have invested in Sammy Walker being their guy and running the show in the middle of the field. So I believe DCE plays 6, Sammy Walker plays 7, and they create this combination of DCE almost playing just the backup second receiver role like a traditional 5'8" does, and Sammy Walker gets the keys to the Rolls Royce, really being in Bondi, to be creative and to let the boys know where they're going on the field and really steer the ship, and then just hopefully Sammy Walker learns from DCE and what it takes to be a premier half in the NRL. And Tedesco is going to do his thing out the back. He just won a Dally M. He's not going anywhere right now. Robson at 9, I think, would be a massive inclusion defensively, and then just getting quality service out of hooker. And then with the ability for Connor Watson to come on in that utility role, bring that impact off the bench, that energy like he does in Origin. So I think their spine is pretty damn good, and Robbo's he's seen too many combinations throughout the years, and he's won with those combinations. So I believe the massive upside for this club, and I've got them in the top 4. I just think there's too much quality football and experience for them to really struggle. So top 4 for me.
Jake, are you in the same boat, brother?
I've got them 1 to 4, mate. That spine is juicy. Teddy, DCE, Robson, and Walker. It's my favourite spine in the comp. I think it's the most well balanced spine. Now, if you look at Teddy and DCE, still firing at the back end of their career, that'll just make it so much easier for Robson and Walker, especially Walker. I think DCE being there is going to bring Walker along a lot quicker. I think less pressure will be placed upon Walker, and I think in my opinion, by looking at it, I think DCE might have a bit more of a controlling role, where Walker will be a little bit more off the cuff, but I think he'll still play 7 because he's going to be there long term. I think Robson's gone under the radar as the purchase for them, obviously with DCE moving there from Manly. I think Robson is the glue to that spine, in my opinion. The forward pack, White, Watson, you get them going forward, and then you've also, as a big in, it's Crichton's last year. Imagine sending out and having that as your firing point for the year. Hey, boys, we want to send a stalwart back rower who's been massive for our club, the state, and our country with a chip. I just see so much positive things coming out of the Roosters, and I think the biggest thing for that club is Robson as their coach. He surprised me last year, but it was also, I could see him doing it with the forward pack they had. A lot of people were questioning their forward pack and some of the moves they had made. They didn't actually go out and get anyone. He brought all these blokes through and gave them the jerseys and said, boys, it's on yous now. And they all delivered. They all delivered, in my opinion. So I think it's going to be massive for the Roosters. I see them in the 1 to 4, and I'm looking forward to seeing that spine set up a whole heap of tries this year.
And Jakey, I think a lot of people as well are in the similar sort of boat to yourself when they saw the Roosters, back their young guns and not bring anyone else in, especially in the pack. But I almost think as well, like we saw this exact thing happen in 2021. This exact thing, because they had a bunch of injuries in the pack. You saw guys like Naf White, he made his debut that year. You also had guys like the Butcher brothers as well, Nuttanague and Butcher. You had a bunch of these guys come in and take those roles and excel. And that's why they're, talked about as first graders, because they came in, they did an exceptional job, they delivered, and now we've got them in the 17, and it's hard to leave them out, as well as a bunch of other guys that, names don't spring to mind straight away. So, I mean, they've got some really good young guys. You've got guys like Taylor Lasalu, who obviously was a concreter at the start of the year and then got a top 30 contract. Just some absolutely unreal stories. Blake Steep as well, Celesi Fiketti, these guys that they've brought through. I look at them in the same sort of breath as, the Butchers of 2021 and Naf Whites, in the sense that they've brought these guys through for a reason, and they've backed these guys in for a reason, and you'll see them more in first grade this year. So off the back of that, giving these young guys experience, they're going to be ready for it. They're going to be ready for what the start of the year and this entire year is going to bring. And then you add on to that this star-studded spine. You talked about Reece Robson. It's the first proper hooker they've had at the club, I'd say, probably since Sam Verrills, but then again, I'd even say since Jake Friend. It is probably the best hooker they've had at the club since then. So that's obviously going to be really, really good to have for the Roosters. A genuine 9 that can give really good service, defensively very, very solid. New South Wales and Australia quality. That's obviously going to be massive for the Roosters. DCE in is always a positive. Sammy Walker at his best, as you were sort of alluding to there, Riley, and then James Tedesco, who seems to be doing the damn thing in his mid-30s, which is just absolutely incredible. This is definitely a top 4 side. Is this a side we'd say is definitely, I wouldn't say locked in, but would you guys say that they're probably right up there for a grand final threat? Riley, I'll get to you first.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing you have to realise with this club, with this particular playing group, is they're losing a few key players after this year. So this is almost their last dance without this particular playing group. Still remains to be seen whether DCE continues to play next year. But losing Marky Mark, Angus Crichton, Tupou's getting really old, same with Teddy. This may be it for them. So I think they'll all be up and ready, and hoisting that trophy is not something that would surprise me at all at the end of this season.
What about you, Jakey? You think they're a grand final threat?
Mate, I totally agree. I think they're a major premiership threat. There's a heap of motivation there. There's a heap of fresh faces for them. And the biggest thing with I just want to recap on Robbo. So they've got their 1 to 17, but there's blokes that are out of that 17 that played a lot of first grade this year. And Robbo pretty much went up to him and said, "Here's a jersey, mate. What are you going to do about it?" Those blokes are chomping at the bit trying to push into that 17. When you got like your 18, 19, all the way to like your 22nd player turning up to train and revving at 10, getting everyone else going, mate, that's when the club's humming. So it's going to be big for them. And if their key members stay fit, I see them very, very potentially being in the big dance.
All right, let's get stuck into their rivals, the Rabbitohs. I want to start with you, Jakey. What are your thoughts on the Bunnies this year? I sort of look at them as a top 4 threat. I just don't know if I have them in and around that spot. I'd say more so 5 to 8. Are you in the similar sort of boat there?
Mate, I've got them in the 9 to 10 in the flip of a coin market for me. I think it was hard for me to smack bang put them in the top 8 just for the fact of last year and some big inclusions this year. But the questions to be seen, will they fire? Now, it's good looking at their team because it's stacked, both sides of the field and the middle. The question is, are they all going to play every week? Are they all going to turn up for Wayne? Is Wayne going to get him firing? Like, I've heard David Fafita's lost 6 to 7 kilos. Like, to me, reading that, he's ready to get shot out of a cannon. But the thing with Fafita is consistency. Now, Wayne can get the best out of him, but does David want to get the best out of him? He's got a massive point to prove, so that may ignite him as well. Latrell's Latrell. I really, really hope he gets in that centre position because that's where they're looking to play him. And just when the ball gets to him, something will happen. Now, can they play finals? 100%. But I'll probably have to look back at my selection with this, maybe round 8 to 12, to see if it's clicking for them. But they can definitely play finals. I just don't have them in that top 8 outfit for me yet.
What about you, Riley? Do you think that they're good enough to be a top 8 side, or are you sort of in a similar boat to Jakey where they're probably just on the fringe?
Yeah, I've got them in that 5 to 8 region. Obviously, the huge asterisk is just health. They have the bones to basically go all the way, really. But can they stay healthy? Can they perform in their positions, wherever they play? With Latrell in the centres, I think that's actually quite a good move. Frees him up, takes a little bit of pressure off him, and off his cardio too. So I think he performed quite well in the Origin series last year at centre. So I think he can use his aggression in defence, and then just early ball out the back and cause a bit of destruction. The Cheese, from all reports, he's much happier in Redfern than he was Bondi. That obviously plays a role into how players perform. Should he stay healthy, we've seen he's played at the highest level of the game. I think he brings an energy to the club as well off the field, but he also has a lot of creativity out of hooker, and he's just a rock solid nugget that'll bust through the line. So I think he brings an extra dynamic that they kind of lacked at hooker last year, particularly in attack. Like I said, they have the bones to go all the way. Should they stay healthy? Like Jakey said, can they perform week in, week out? It remains to be seen, but I definitely have them in the 8, and improving is probably what they're looking for. But top 8 for me is where I see the Rabbits.
I can't get them out of the 8, and it might be just me being a bit of a biased South supporter, but
you're South, are you?
Yeah, I am. Look, it was a tough year last year, so I'm coming into this year a little bit more optimistic. I like him. I think that, if you can get the best out of Latrell, which is, I guess, what both of you guys are sort of alluding to, if you can get the best out of Latrell, Fafita, all of the stars in this roster, it is a star-studded roster. And I think as well, Riley, you were making the point as well about Latrell moving him into the centres, and not so. I guess you were sort of saying, a little bit less involvement and just freeing him up a little bit more to come in the big moments. I feel like Jai Gray at fullback is going to be a huge positive, and we saw that last year just with his work rate there. Such a small body, but getting around 250, 300 metres a game and just working his ass off defensively. But then also, you've got Latrell Mitchell, who is probably the best defensive centre in the game when he's playing centre. His reads in defence are probably some of the best, even at fullback last year, that game against the Broncos in particular, where he tackled Payne Haas one-on-one, and I think Selwyn Cobbo as well a couple of sets later. He is just defensively so solid. So to have that side shored up, particularly that left edge where, I think they experimented with guys like Tass and, a few other guys in that left centre position, and defensively they weren't great. So the fact that they can lock in an edge, hopefully with AJ staying healthy as well, but defensively as well, you got big bodies there, and Latrell Mitchell defensively can really shore up that edge as well. So I think defensively this side's going to improve massively. I know that the attack is the obvious thing to sort of highlight here, but defensively I just look at how they've sort of structured their team and the guys moving around, and I do like it. And I back Jai Gray defensively as well out the back there from the little effort areas that we saw last year. Jake, you in the same boat?
With the Rabbitohs, sorry.
Yeah, defensively, with moving a couple of guys around, do you think that they've put themselves in a really good spot, and especially Latrell moving back into the centres, being one of the game's better defensive centres, does that really shore them up on their edges?
It does, because then you've got Jack Whiten on the other side. I think we underestimate Jack Whiten at certain stages because of how star-studded the Rabbitohs team is, and he's sort of gone under the radar this year, but I feel whatever team Jack Whiten has played in, obviously it's been Canberra before, now the Rabbitohs, when he's going, he gets every other person going. He's got that ability to bring people along with him. Not saying that other players can't, but I think he's going to be a very focal point in their season. If he's going, I think everyone sort of gets on the back of that. And defensively, I've watched the games when Latrell plays in the centres, they actually avoid going down that side. because of the strength. He does. He's got this ability where he allows you to think you can get around him, and then all of a sudden you're in the fifth row of the grandstand. So the thing is, when you start having that confidence on both edges in defense, where are you going to go? Because you can't, there's very rarely is there barge overs in the first grade arena. So if you're humming both sides of the park in defense, you got to then start bringing out all of your tricks in the bag. So it'll be interesting, but I do see Latrell being a major defensive problem for attacking teams. And, if Jack Whiten continues to grow and do what he does in his centre position, it's going to be a formidable defensive line.
Yeah, 100%. I do tend to agree. Boys, just lastly as well, Cam Murray getting back into this team, I think he's massive. I think they've missed him, not even just from an attacking standpoint, the smaller body, quick play the balls, just the service through the middle of the field with his hands, but defensively as well in the middle of the park, and just the confidence that he gave the boys around him. I think that they really missed that. Riley, how much of an impact do you see Cam Murray coming back into this side having on the playing group?
Oh, it's huge. We saw it last year. He was probably one of the first of the bunnies to go down early in the season. So we saw it as soon as he went down. It was almost instant deflation for hopes of this team. So he brings everything on both sides of the ball. Defensively, he's good in whatever position he's playing, and then ball playing out the back to the halves, or just off the hip to another front rower coming up alongside him. He's proved it at every level of the game, really. He's a massive inclusion, and he's been around the block now for a fair few years, so he's only getting better in his leadership.
Jake, 100%. Jakey, anything to add before we move on to the Raiders?
Murray's a massive in. He's huge. He'll be the glue for him. I hope he stays healthy the whole season.
100%. Canberra, look, this is an interesting one for me because I feel like, sure, I can see them having a really good season. I just look at that halfback jersey and I think it could be make or break, really, for them. If they can get the best out of either Kobe Black or Ethan Sanders, don't know what that was, little notification there. If they can get the best out of those guys, then that is going to be unreal for them, and I think that they are going to be definitely just as successful as last year. But if they don't, and they sort of chop and change a little bit, and they panic in and around that halfback jersey, that's where I can start to see issues arising. Jake, are you in a similar sort of boat?
Mate, I've got them in the 1 to 4 bracket. I reckon they've got a great mix in that squad. As you were just talking about the halfback position, it's going to be difficult. But, mate, they've got Ricky Stewart there. Ricky Stewart's one of the greatest halfbacks to ever play rugby league. So I think him mentoring that spot for them, I think it'll happen a lot faster for them. And, mate, they've got a point to prove. They've got unfinished business. Like, they went out in straight sets after winning the Minor Premiership last year. There's definitely 100% there'd have to be internal talks around that and how they can improve once they're in the finals this year. I just see them in that top 4 due to the fact that will spur their season on. Now, it's also a major point with, them possibly dropping out to the top 4 and maybe that Storm Panthers sort of area going up. But I see them remaining in the top 4 with form and injuries, hopefully not, bringing their season to a little bit of a disruption.
Yeah, look, I do tend to agree. I think the big watch will be Ethan Strange, right? I think if they can get him a little bit more ball dominant, especially while these other halves are easing in, that's going to be a big thing for me. Riley, what are your thoughts on Canberra? Do you have them as high as Jakey, or do you think they're probably going to digress a little bit just with this halfback, conversation?
No, I'm in the same boat. Top 4 finish for me. But with saying that, we could all see them, landing in that 5 to 8 spot. I think, like you touched on, Ethan Strange will have to be the man while the halfback situation plays itself out. But they've got Payne now to use. These young guys they've got the pain of last year to use as extra motivation going forward. And we've seen the talent that these young guys have. Kyle Weeks out the back. I've got huge raps on him. If he can perform as good or even better than last year, and then Tarp's up front, leading the way, I think they've got what it takes to finish in the top four. Whether they could go all the way or not, I'm not as certain, but I definitely think they're in for a good season, Canberra.
I thought you were talking about Payne Haas then, mate. I only fell out of my chair. But look, they do. They do have a good forward pack. I really do like how that is shaped up. Obviously, Tarp's one of the game's best front rowers. You've got Papali'i still there. Probably his final season too, so it would be an unreal send-off for them if they were to get into the top four again. But not only that, probably go and try and fight for a premiership and get a little bit further than last year. I just don't know. I feel like that this halfback situation is probably going to hurt them quite a bit. And just compared to a few other sides, like your Brisbanes, who we're going to touch on in a second, and some of these other guys who already have that set, Sharks, Roosters, even Penrith, the likes of Storm, all these sort of sides who have already got that locked in. They've got matured and seasoned halfbacks in that roster. They're, I guess, in a bit of they're an extra step ahead. And I feel like that might hurt Canberra a little bit when it comes to fighting for the 8. Other than that, I mean, their pack is unbelievable and it could be enough to get them there.
Yeah.
I look at the halfback situation for me and there's definitely a few question marks. Guys, they tried and experimented with Kyo Weeks at 7 at stages when they were sort of trying to figure out what was going on without Jamal Fogarty, who obviously tore his bicep. I didn't mind that at all, really. I think it's definitely a good temporary option. Is there any chance that we see potentially a Chevy Stewart or someone start the year at fullback, or even Dane Laurie, who they've just purchased, which would make a ton of sense, start the year at fullback, and then we see Kyo potentially move into the halves while they give these guys a little bit of extra time in reserve grade to sort of get in and around the system, especially Kobe Black, who's just come to the club. I almost look at that and I think that might be a little bit of a safer play for them, and especially with how good their attack can be, I think that they can definitely potentially take that risk. Jake, what are your thoughts?
Mate, I'm a big believer in if you buy a player to play a certain position, you're playing there. I don't believe, I don't believe playing other people that aren't specifically in that position just to sort of see how they go is going to do any good for their season. I think they bring Black down there from the Broncos to play halfback. Is that correct?
They've brought him down there, but I'm not too sure. They've clearly said that Sanders will start the year at 7.
Yep.
And then Kobe Black has his opportunity to work his way into the side.
I think they leave Sanders in there then. I think if he's the halfback, I believe you give halves 10 to 12 rounds. See how they fit in with the side, see how they're directing the forwards around, see how they're going with their kicking. And you got to give him that confidence. There's no point in putting him in there for 2 or 3 games and going, I may not play him well enough. Stick it out with him, let him build his confidence, let him cop his bruises. Then by halfway in the season, if you feel that it's starting to go a different way, they do have that luxury to bring Black in, who they bought from the Broncos, and then giving him an opportunity if it's sort of not clicking for him. That's the way I view it anyway.
What about you, Riley? Do you reckon that they should stick it out and start the year with one of Sanders or Black?
Yeah, I agree. I think give the halves a chance in the halves first and foremost. A fullback playing in the halves, we've seen that experiment a few times throughout different clubs. But I think Kyle Weeks he's just too talented and he brings so much out the back to put someone else there who just doesn't quite have the same impact. So give the halves a shot in the halves first, like Jakey alluded to, and then if that doesn't work, you can throw all options in the air.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the Brizzy Broncos. Now, I want to ask you both straight out. Are you seeing the Broncos drop out of the 4? I just feel like they're going to be in a pretty similar position to last year. What do you guys think?
You go, Riley.
Yeah, I agree with you in that 5 to 8. I think how they finished the season with their finals wins and the GF has kind of painted a little bit of a pretty picture on how the rest of their season went. and then to add to that with a grand final hangover that I can definitely see this team having. That 5 to 8 region seems fair. They're still quite young in certain positions, and we just don't know how this grand final win and all this celebration is going to have an impact on their off season and then their preseason and then into the early rounds of this season. So I think that they still are a grand final favourite, if not the second favourite. But they'll be there's no certainty that they're going to keep their position at the top.
What about you, Jake? Do you reckon they're 1 to 4 or 5 to 8?
Mate, I've got them sitting firmly in the 1 to 4. They're the 92 Dream Team. They've got strike all over the park. I think they'll be better for coming off I believe they've got the back-to-back label put on them. I think they can go all the way again. I'm calling it early. I think they have the coach there to be able to sort of put him through that. I think he had a lot of learning for himself last year, Madge. I think he is capable to get them back into the big dance and possibly going again. They've got motivation as well. I know it's a word that I've said a lot, but it does bring a lot to your footy club. It's probably Ben Hunt's last season there. They've got Payne Huss. They've got Walsh out the back. They've got Katoni Staggs in the centre. Ezra Mams back firing. Like, they've just got everything you need to go back-to-back, in my opinion. Their bench is very well balanced. Their forward pack is full of hard workers and big bodies. Barring injuries, mate, I see them possibly putting the trophy up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that they've definitely got that back-to-back potential. I think the only question mark I have on Brisbane is Reno with his injury and just fitness. I think that them getting to go back-to-back, I just don't think they're going to be as... I wouldn't even say lucky, because they turned that season completely around just with the way that they played, getting around each other, getting around Madge and what he was trying to instill at the club culture-wise. I just don't think that they're going to have that again this year. We know that they're around Madge. We know that they're around the culture that they've sort of created there through Madge at the club. I do think with Reno, I think it's definitely injury watch. I think if there is any sign of him getting injured again, and getting injured frequently throughout the year, then that's going to be question marks galore. And if they can even be, in and around the 8. I think they've definitely got the side to be there again. You got Payne, you got Paddy Carrigan there through the middle, Xavier Willison, Allblix Tower from the Dolphins, who I'm very high on. You've obviously got as well Ricky, who ended the year unbelievable. So you've got a good pack. You've got Walsh, you've got Mam, you've got a real star-studded team, and you've definitely got a side that can go back-to-back for sure. My question mark does seem to be around Reno, though. Riley, you in a similar sort of boat as well?
Yeah, definitely. He's got a history now of injuries, and even late in the season last year. So, but they're just lucky that they have Ben Hunt there too, just waiting to put on that number 7 jersey if he needs to, and then they can fill that 9 jersey with Billy Walters if they need to. So they've got the luxury of options, and those options have plenty of experience too. So I don't think it's a massive loss should they lose Reynolds, because then you just slide Hunt straight in, but he is still a key position and a key player in that squad. What
about you? Are you in a similar sort of boat, Jakey? How worried are you about Reno?
Mate, I think it's just a headline, to be honest. I think if Reynolds does go down, you just put Hunt there. You know what I mean? Unless they, their whole spine gets injured, they've got to, as Wally was saying, they've got enough troops there to sort of fill those gaps and not lose too much, to be honest. Like, Hunt for Reynolds is pretty much a swap for swap besides the goal kicking. Hunt's a great leader. He was a captain at the Dragons. He sets a standard, mate. You watch him play, he competes on everything. He's a genius player. So I think if they stay healthy, it's just a headline that people will write up. And you know what? There's a chance he does. But, that's what comes with footy sometimes, and I don't think it takes anything away from their team or him being a lesser player. I just think that it's a little bit of a burden that's sort of come over the top of him, but they've got enough troops there to steady the ship and continue to push forward, in my opinion.
All right, then. Let's move on to the Dragons. This is such an interesting conversation, right? Because we looked at, I mean, for me at least, I looked at their season and thought that they looked quite good. They looked like they were definitely improving from the previous year, yet they finished, what was it, 15th? Like they didn't look like a side that was 15th on the ladder last year. So if they can improve and if they can get better, then I can certainly see them around the 9 to 12 bracket. But I mean, if they stay the same as last year and still look good, there is that danger of them falling into that 13 to 16 bracket. Jakey, what are your thoughts?
Mate, this is my smoky. I see the Dragons in the 5 to 8. Now, the reason why I say this, they've got all their young bucks back. It's a young man's game at the moment. And I think that core group they've got there in that forward pack will be chomping at the bit to prove themselves as first grade players. I think it'll take a little bit of learning for them. I think they've got to get bashed around a little bit. But I think by the end of the year, they'll be doing the bashing. I think they've got a great core group of experienced veterans around them that'll steady the ship. I think the bench has some really good balance. And I think Gutherson is the key there. I know we talk of Gutherson a lot, but I think he's so detrimental to how they go this year with him out the back. And just leading everything. Like, he leads the fitness. The bloke's 33 or 32. And, like, mate, when you're a young bloke and you see that just makes you want to train harder. So I think he brings that out of him. You got your Damien Cook there. I think something that they need to do is make sure Blake Laurie's coming off the bench or starting. That he's a bloke that bleeds the red V, right? He's a stalwart. He'll take a hit up from anywhere, and he sets the tone early. You need those sort of blokes. And with a young forward pack, he's invaluable for them. The biggest thing and the biggest question mark is, for me, is if the coach can make the right calls during the year if something isn't going their way. Because there's going to be times in everybody's season where maybe a big call has to happen for the club and for the team. If he can do that, I think that may create a little bit of shift in the dressing room. But in my opinion, I think they've got enough to sneak into the 8.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree. I think that they've got the side to be there. I'm just not sure if I'd have them there this year with the other sides in the competition. I mean, we'll get to them a little bit later on, spoilers, but the Dolphins I'd probably have there over them. I'd probably have the Bulldogs over the Dragons. There's a few sides there that I'd have over them, but I certainly think that they're a threat. Riley, what about yourself?
Yeah, I've got them in that 13 to 16 range. Again, we kind of just seen the same thing from them, underperforming. Now, to give them credit, they were in a lot of close games last year and ones that they could have won. I think it all comes down to, rightfully so, maybe not rightfully so, Daniel Atkinson has a lot of pressure on his shoulders this coming season, and it's the type of pressure he's never had to really handle at this level before. He's definitely very good coming over from Cronulla. He's versatile, although he probably should play 7. And I think he needs to take control because I don't have a lot of faith in Kyle Flanagan being able to play that 7 role week in, week out. So I've got Atkinson leading them around, but at the same time, we haven't seen that from him before. So I don't think there's a lot of improvement coming from this side this year. But then again, you just never know. Maybe they flip the script and they win all those close games.
You're definitely right in saying that we haven't seen that from Atkinson consistently before. When he does play first grade, it is usually in that 5'8" position. There was that game against Melbourne where he obviously carved up. He was pretty much the only half in the side and had an absolute blinder. But other than that, we haven't really seen him take charge of a side and be a 7. So that is going to be big. You're right. There definitely is a little bit of pressure on the shoulders of Daniel Atkinson. And I also agree with your sentiments around Flano. I feel like we've tried to throw him into a 7 jersey previously at other clubs, even at the Dragons at stages. I think that he's a really good. I think he can be a really good 6. I do. I look at the little bits and pieces we saw from him at 6 when Ben Hunt was still at the club, and just his running game on that left side, and just how he was setting up guys on that left side for tries as well. Even at stages last year, there was that point at a midpoint of the season. I think it was around 13, 14. where he had two really big games, and they were both on the left-hand side, and they were both with his running game. He scored I think he scored 2 tries or something in one game, really close to the line on third or fourth. And then the game after that, he was setting up tries galore on that left-hand side of the field. So I think that he can be a solid 6. And if they can get the best out of Atkinson, Jakey, I'm sort of in a similar boat to you. I think that they can definitely push for the 8. I'm going to be a little bit of a peaceful negotiator between the two of you. I'm going to go 9 to 12. I think that that's probably where I see them sit going into this year or the back end of this year. I think that they can definitely make a case for themselves. I just don't know if they're going to be, by the end of the year, better than some of the other sides that we've got already in our 8. And I think we need to sort of – this is going to be interesting because we're at the boiling point now. We've obviously got 7 of our top 8 fields, so there might be a bit of shuffling happening sometime soon. Let's get to the Manly Seagulls. I am so conflicted on them because they I think we said it before, Seabold's probably under quite a bit of pressure to going into this year. I think if they aren't a top 8 side this year, there are serious questions around Seabold and his future there. I think as well, Tom Trbojevic, there's a lot of question marks about him if he can stay fit for majority of the games. What are your thoughts, Riley, on the Manly Seagulls to going into this season?
Probably a similar boat to the Rabbits in terms of where they're going to play some of their outside backs, particularly with Turbo and Trell. They could honestly see themselves in the same role, playing that hybrid centre, maybe a little bit of a license to roam like we've seen in Origin from both of them. So I think this is going to be one to see where Tommy's at when it comes to these preseason games. Is he fully fit? Is he carrying anything? I think if he's fully fit, ready to go, his body feels fresh, I'd give him the 1 and just let him play it out. I think he's earned that. And then you find a spot for Lehigh, Kohler, somewhere else in the back line. They have speed, they have points, but there's a lot of question marks on if they can win the games that they're supposed to win. And if Luke Brooks can take a step up, I like what he's been doing, playing that second fiddle. But I think he kind of needs to take a little bit of a step up in terms of involvement, but then also let Jamal do what he's been doing at Canberra and run the ship and manage the game situations when needed, because I think he's very good at that, Fogarty. I think they have the players to really push for an 8 spot. I just think with the level of competition that the other teams are in that 8 already, I can't see them gaining one of those spots.
Yeah, I do agree. I look at Manly. It is going to be an interesting season for them. Turbo, obviously, being fit's going to be the big one. You mentioned it before, Lehigh, getting the best out of these sort of guys out of the fullback jersey. I actually think that, and I sort of said it, especially more so during the times where he was getting injured quite a bit, Turbo, I'd love to see him in that centre position and have Lehigh at the back there at fullback. I see so much upside in playing Lehigh at fullback, having him roaming both sides and just being a real threat. And I sort of liked what they were doing with him at centre for the time that they did, and then they just moved him back. So whilst I do like the thought of him playing in that sort of role, I think that they've sort of won and done it now, and I think that they are very focused on getting the best out of Turbo at fullback. So hopefully they can this year. Jakey, what are your thoughts on Manly overall going into season 2026?
I've got him in the 13 to 16 range, mate. I think the bridge has been burnt there with the playing group, so some of the playing group, and the coach. I think Siebes is under as much pressure, if not more, than Payton up at the Cowboys. I think sort of the proof was in the pudding. I think Turbo only signed for 1 year extension. I think he's waiting to see sort of what happens this year, to see if there's a change within the club to commit longer, possibly. I found it strange that he only re-signed for a 1 year extension. That was sort of a bit of a telling sign for me with my business hat on. But I don't see them sort of pushing for a top 8 top 8 spot with some of the rosters still on the board and involved. There's just too many question marks around the club, and there's a possible DCE hangover. So yeah, I've got him in that 13 to 16 range.
As much as I love Paseka and a few of these other guys in this pack as well, and even Bullymore from the years that we've seen from him there so far, I just don't rate their forward pack compared to some of these other teams as well. I think that even if they do come out firing and turbo and you can get the best out of these sort of guys, I just don't know if when push comes to shove, if their pack is good enough to go head to head with some of these other packs as well. So that's obviously going to be a bit of a watch with the Manly Sea Eagles. I struggle to see them, as you boys have alluded to, breaking into that 8. I think that they're going to have a pretty average season this year. And as you said, Jakey, probably that DCE hangover is going to be looming. This is a side I'm super conflicted on, the Bulldogs. I really don't know where to have them at all, to be honest. I want to grab your thoughts, boys. I'll start with you, Riley. What are we thinking about the Dogs going into this year? I think it really does sort of rest on the shoulders of what they're going to do with their halves and what direction they want to go in, if this is a rebuilding year or if this is a finals year.
Yeah, they've kind of they made their bed last year, and now they got to figure out how to lay in it. So I think Galvin's got a pre-season with these boys now, and with this coaching staff. So they're going to kind of have a bit more of an idea of what they want to do with him and the role that they want him to play in. You're right. There's just a lot of question marks over this spine. I've even seen talks of Crichton pushing back to 1. I don't necessarily think that's the best option for him. He's the best centre in the game, so keep him there. I do love this team on paper, and I like what Serrato's done and everything that this club has done over the last 2-3 years. I like their senior leadership group. A lot of them have big game experience. Until those question marks about their halves are kind of figured out, we just don't know what we're going to see from this team. Defensively, we saw this last year. They're really good. I like them to make the 8. But in saying that, if they don't get their halves figured out and figured out in the first half of the season, we could see a bit of a fall apart of this team. But I do like them to make the 8.
Jakey, I'm going to ask you straight up, with Mitch Woods at 7 and Galvin at 6, can this side play finals footy?
Mate, I'm so conflicted because any team with Stephen Crichton in it, to me, is golden. But I just do not understand what they did last year in the front office by doing what they did. I can't get over them imploding the team and the squad when they were winning the competition, and like they didn't even look like losing. It blew my mind. I've never seen that in the world of rugby league. Winning the competition, like looking like some games were just training runs, and then going, we're going to change the spine, and then we're going to let our 9 go. It was a circus for about 10 rounds. So I actually don't have them in the 8. I think that it's going to be very hard with your 6 and 7s being first and second year. I think it's going to be daunting for them. I think they have the potential to play finals, but I don't have them in there. I think they're another team that, maybe I have my foot in my mouth by round 10 due to the, Crichton being in the team. They bring Leo Thompson in as their leader now. Serrato's obviously a great coach, but I've got a little bit of a question mark on them, to be honest, if they can replicate what they were doing last year before they decided to chuck a grenade into the squad.
Yeah, well, I agree. I feel like what they've sort of done with letting go of Sexton. Sexton's probably the big one for me. Like Reid Marnie are going to Bailey Hayward. I like Bailey Hayward. I think he's a good player, and I think he can do a good job there once they develop him into the 9 position. Mind you, Bailey Hayward is a 7. He's a halfback, and they've turned him into a 9. But the Sexton one for me, getting rid of a guy that was, you won the first however many games to start the year back to back, 8 or 9 games in a row to start the season, which is unbelievable. You were first on the ladder. to then look at that and go, I think we might need to change at halfback, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense. It's almost like Melbourne going, you know what? We're going to change things up. Jerome Hughes, Cam Munster, you guys can play reserve grade. We're going to bring through Keegan Russell-Smith and Trent Toilau and put you guys in the halves. Like it doesn't make a ton of sense in my opinion. And I just feel like they've sort of shot themselves in the foot, as you were sort of alluding to there, Jakey, in playing finals footy this year. As much as I love Critter, and I think that he is going to be great for them, they're going to win games with him there in that sort of hybrid centre role, what he was sort of doing at the back end of last year with Tracy. That looks really, really good. You've got Kickow. Hopefully Burton is in there somewhere, probably from what it sounds like at left centre. They've got a great team on paper, as you were sort of alluding to, Riley, but I just don't have any confidence. Well, not any confidence. I don't have much confidence that Mitch Woods and Lockie Galvin can take you to finals. I really don't. I love Mitch Woods. I think that he is going to be a great halfback or even a 5'8" in our game, watching his highlights. Definitely a great player to come. But it's just a strange call. I mean, I guess Canberra are doing it with Kobe Black, and the Dolphins did it with Isaiah Katoa, but they were obviously a side coming fresh into the competition. They had the excuse to. I just don't know if it's the right call when you had Sexton, and not only if you had Sexton, you had Marnie, but you were undefeated for the first 9 games of last year. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, does it, Jakey?
It doesn't. Well, the excuses of the 5-year plan. Okay, the 5-year plan is great, but you're potentially going to win the comp this year. So it sort of it null and voids the 5-year plan. But if they do win a comp in the next 5 years, we've all got our foot on our mouths. But hindsight, I just don't understand it. There's no, I don't know. The only thing I can put it down to with Mahoney going is that's a salary cap thing. I wouldn't imagine that the bloke that they're Haywood that's there now would be on as much money as him, and that allows them to bring Leo Thompson in because they did need a big middle. So I think they juggled their cap around in that regards. But to get rid of Sexton, mate, like he looked like he was in second gear. He was just cruising and gliding that team around the park. It looked like a training run, and then all of a sudden it just brought too much attention to what had happened. There was playing managers involved, and there was this and that. The Tigers got dragged into it. It was just a massive commotion. So I hope the young fellas go really well. I wish them all the confidence in the world that they succeed this year as individuals and for the club. But I just think, looking at it, it may be a little bit too much.
Yeah, look, I do tend to agree. Riley, did you throw up a position for them? You still had them in the 8, yeah?
Yeah. I had them in the 5th to 8 region.
All right, cool. So I think we'll go with 9 to 12. I think me and Jakey had 9 to 12, so I'm going to throw them in.
Yeah, I had them outside. Sorry, yeah, apologise.
Easy. All right, let's move to the Gold Coast Titans. Riley, I want to start with you, mate. I'm almost as conflicted as I am about the Bulldogs, but I definitely have more confidence in the Titans than I do the Bulldogs with the half situation. But that's, I guess, another question mark here for the Gold Coast Titans is the halves with Jaden Campbell and AJ Brimson. I'm going to throw you pretty much the same question I threw to Jakey about the Dogs with you and the Titans. With Jaden Campbell and AJ in the halves, do you reckon this side is a final side?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, no, I don't think that they're a top 8 side. They have 3 fullbacks playing different roles, and I do believe that each of those players, their best position is fullback. So I like Campbell with another year to develop as a half. I like that. I think he can transition into that role quite well. But they will just lack a lot of probably just someone to dominate when it comes to needing to make the right play at the right time for their team, particularly if they're in a lead. So I think they have all the excitement, they have all the talent to blow the doors off of teams and score points. But when it comes to actually controlling a game, that's where they're lacking. A coach in his first year We'll see what type of culture he can create. It's not exactly the easiest thing to do in the Gold Coast, but I've got him in that 13 to 16 range once again for the Titans.
What about you, Jakey? What are your thoughts on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, I got them 13 to 16. I look at the halves and I go, who's directing the team? I think they've got a lot of great off the cuff players and players that can, cut the game wide open. Brimson especially, great talent. It's just more or less who's going to steady the ship. I think if they're one of those teams that can score four tries in 10 minutes, but then they'll let 5 in 15. I think having Fafita not there, salary cap wise, has enabled them to be able to bring in a couple players, and maybe they've had a preseason where they've all worked extremely hard, and they've got all these hard workers there now. I think Tino needs to stay there just for that club. Whether he does or not, that's completely up to him. But I think having that lingering over your head, whether your best player and captain of the club and team is going to be there next year, is a little bit of a shadow hanging over the head of the club also. But I see them being competitive. I just don't see them playing finals footy. I think they're just there to make the numbers up, to be honest. But I wish Josh Hannay all the best in his first year as first grade coach, and he'll only get better.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. 13 to 16 is probably where I have them. I think that as well, like you talk about not being able to steer the ship without a gun halfback in there. I also think that you don't have a kicking game either. None of these players have a long kicking game. So if they are getting bashed in a game through the middle, which I don't know if it's going to be totally possible with Tino there, but if they are getting really bashed through the middle of the field, they've got no way to get out of their own end. Unless, there's a miracle and Jaden Campbell develops a really, really solid long kicking game. I just really struggle to see them getting into the 8. I think it is a year of just getting used to a new system and a new culture. I'm not really expecting anything too much out of the Gold Coast, even though, we saw so much success with Madge in his first year at the Brisbane Broncos. I think that, Hannay's obviously learning the systems. He's learning the head coach role. And I think that it's going to take some time to build what they're building at the Gold Coast Titans, especially if they're going to want to go with his halves pairing of AJ and JC. Boys, we'll fly through the last couple of these. Newcastle, I think they're 13 to 16. I think that as much as they can be a really good attacking outfit, I don't know if they are going to go with Sharp and Brown, which the more and more I hear about Fletcher Sharp and how he's training there, the more I feel like they're going to go away from Sandon in the 7 role, and they are going to go with Sharp and Brown. I don't know if that's going to be similar to the Titans and that sort of thought process. They don't really have someone to direct the team, and they're really trying to go hard on their attack. And then on the flip side of that as well, they don't have the forward pack to suit that style of play. Jakey, what are your thoughts on the Knights?
Yeah, I've got the Knights in the 13 to 16 range. I think they can cause some upsets and maybe sneak into the 8 if Ponga and Brown really fire and click. I think having those two in your spine's very, very important. I just struggle to see if they can pull off 8 to 9 out of 10 games as a team, for more than half of the season. I think it might be another learning season for them. It'll be interesting to see what sort of happens with their cap in the years to come, due to Brown and Ponga obviously taking up, I reckon, around 20-25% for 2 players. I think they're going to have some more struggles in the years to come until they get that cap right. But they've got a good enough team to shake a couple teams up. I just don't see them playing finals footy over a couple of the other teams that are already in the 8.
I do agree. Riley, you in the same sort of boat?
Yeah, 100%. They have the potential to really make a case for a top 8 side, but you're right. They're very light in the forward packs. Very light. And then we know what they have in terms of strike out the back. Dylan Brown, if he can remain in form, like we've seen at the end of last year. Ponga, Bradman Best, Fletcher Sharp. They've got strike power. Whether they can put that together and close out games remains to be seen. But yeah, 13 to 16 range that's fitting.
Yep, I agree. The Wars, I think that if they can get the best out of Metcalf, they are a top 8 threat. But I'm sort of thinking 9 to 12 for them at the moment. What are your thoughts, Riley?
Yeah, 100% agree. I think a healthy Barnett, a healthy Metcalf makes them dangerous. But they have a track record now of not being a team that can be there at the end and kind of lacking something in some sort of department to really push them over the edge. But you did see at the start of last year with a healthy side, they were pretty potent. But I have them just missing out of the 8 and being one of those teams that you can make a case for either side of that 9 to 12, 5 to 8 region.
Jake, are you in the same sort of boat, brother? 9 to 12?
9 to 12 for who have we got? Sorry, the Wars.
Wars.
I've got the Wars in the 13 to 16 range. I think having Metcalf come back from such a big injury will take them a couple of rounds, and I don't think they can probably afford that. Also, Barnett, two mainstays in their team. If they get rolling early, I think that maybe they could make me eat my own words. But I feel if they don't hit the ground running, it could be a little bit harder for them to catch up towards the back end of the year. Just with travel and that stuff too, might I add.
Yeah, that's a fair shout as well. I just look at Metcalf and the season that he was going to have. Like if he played the full year out, he's your Dally M player of the year.
Yeah.
And I just look at that. I look at him obviously coming back in. Yeah, it's a tough injury to come back from, and yeah, you're not going to come back 100%. But I think one thing he's got on his side is just the hunger. He's going to be hungry to come back in and replicate the season from last year. I think that an underrated guy in that halves pairing as well that doesn't probably get a lot of praise is Shinalaris-Tavita. I mean, when Metcalf was gone, he was that senior half and he was unbelievable. Some of the games that he was able to string together for this side was crazy. So I feel like him and Metcalf having a full season together is going to be only positive. And then you look at Wade Egan, who's probably one of the better 9s in the competition as well. Hopefully they can get some good stuff out of Chance as well there at fullback, or if they decide to go with Tane Tuapiki, that's obviously going to be good as well. They're definitely going to be an interesting watch, aren't they, Riley?
Yeah, definitely. There's always huge energy around this side, or in particular when they play at home.
Hello?
It's always a good watch. You're always going to get some excitement. And they were in a ton of close games last season, so they're definitely not one of those bottom feeders like some of the other clubs that we've talked about. But yeah, they're just lacking a little something to get them to make a good push.
All right, boys, let's get stuck into the West Tigers. I think that they are probably a top 8 threat at best. But I think just where we've thrown the Warriors, I've got them 9 to 12, the Warriors as well. I think that they are going to be a threat. I think with Metcalf, the forward pack, you were sort of talking about Riley, they're going to be a really gun side. Tigers, for me, there's a spot there open for 13 to 16. But I do think in that bracket, they are probably the leaders of that bracket. They're probably in that 13 position. Do you tend to agree, Jakey?
Yeah, mate, I've got them as a top 8 threat. I can see them playing finals footy. It's whether they've learnt those lessons fully from last year into this year. I think they have the team to play finals footy. I think they've got the culture and the buy-in, and it'll be interesting to see how they go there. Another one that was a toss of the coin for me, because I do see them finals bound. Whether they can knock off those other teams within the 8 and get some consistency this year will be remain to see. But I like their chances. I just don't have them in there at the moment.
What about yourself, Riley? Where do you see the West Tigers?
Yeah, I agree with you in that top range of that 12 to 16. 13 to 16. Yeah, I've got them in there. I think they have a good culture, like we've spoken about. They have a lot of players who've played a lot of football together now, and they do have something building. In the first half of last year, there was a bit of promise. They were winning some games that they probably didn't win in the years prior. Then they kind of tailed off and lost a bit of momentum. But there's promise there, but I don't see them delivering on that promise at least this season.
Yeah. Look, I do tend to agree. I think 13 to 16 is fair. What I do like about the Tigers, though, is at least they can lock in some spots. In previous seasons, they've been chopping and changing their side quite a bit, whether it be the halves, whether it be the back line, whether it be even the forward packet stages as well. And what that does is it throws combinations off. This is the first year for them to really lock in a side. Their back line for me is set in stone. They've probably got that Makasini finding his way into the team at some stage throughout the year. You've got Taylor May, you've got Staffatoa, and then you've obviously got Taruva there. So that's pretty much set in stone. Your spine, your 6 and 7, it's most likely going to be Dewey and Jerome Luai in the halves. So that's pretty much locked in. So everything in the key positions is set in stone. And that's what I like about the Tigers this year. I'd say 13 to 16, but geez, they'd be really right on the edge of that, the top end of that for me, fighting into 9 to 12. I think that's probably a perfect spot for them. And then look, we've got one team left. It's the Finns, and I think we can all agree that this is a top 8 side. Look at the Finns going into this year, obviously getting a ton back. They're getting way more back than what they're losing. They've obviously got Jeremy Marshall-King to come back from injury, but other than that, Flegler's back, Gilbert's back. You've obviously got Plath and Donahue both in there as well. Plath, obviously, I think he's going to miss the first couple of games with coming back from that ACL. Hammer, maybe Trey Fuller creeping in there at some stage as well in the fullback spot. But then you've got Cobbo, you've got Herbie Farnworth. I mean, you can just go through all the names in this list. This side is stacked and the depth is unbelievable. This is their year, the Dolphins, for me. Jake, are you in a similar sort of boat?
Yeah, it's a top 4 roster. It's just if they can click. Obviously, Fleggers are big in. They had some wretched injuries last year and still were competing every game. Katoa is just getting better and better. And I think having all the key positions around him now filled, as in the forward pack, getting him that momentum and those quicker play the balls, I think we'll see Genius at work even more this year. As I said, it's a top 4 roster, and they have to sit in the 8 somewhere if they all stay healthy, and I'm just looking forward to see how they play. They're probably, in my opinion, along with the Tigers, the most exciting team to probably watch on TV.
Yeah, look, I do tend to agree. Riley, you in the same sort of boat?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Another year to put it all together with this side. They were very close last year. They're exciting to watch. They've got points in them. They're dangerous on the outsides. Yeah, I think scraping into that 8 is more than likely for them this coming season, and it is good for the game to see a young club really make a push in the finals.
Boys, that's our ladder. Are we happy with how that's looking? Is there anything in there that probably needs to change?
No, it's pretty much That what's theirs similar, except except the Rabbits for me. I think that's a pretty fair ladder. It'd be funny to can we have a look at this towards the end of the year?
100% we can. I'm going to save it and we're going to post it on the page. We'll club with all you guys as well. And then we can certainly look back at the end of the year and see if we were right, if we were wrong. I guess the only change that I'd sort of make, and I'm pretty high on Parramatta, so I'd probably have Parramatta and the Raiders pretty much straight swap. Yeah. And then that would be my ladder for sure. I think they were pretty close. Is there one thing that you'd sort of change, Riley, in there?
Oh, yeah, no, I like it. I think the Dogs and the Dolphins, you could see them flipping spots and maybe those two fighting for an 8th or 9th spot in the last round or two. But other than that, those top 8 teams, we've seen it from year in, year out from some of those clubs, and then the other clubs have been slowly building to what they should be doing, which is making the 8. So I think that's rock solid.
All right, boys. Well, there you go. That's the podcast. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe. Get stuck in to all of our great content. Plenty of interviews coming your way. NRLW star Sophie Curtin talks about nutrition and what it takes to fuel NRL and NRLW athletes. So that podcast is coming very, very soon. Obviously, this one, which was unreal. It's a slugfest, now 40, but we got through it. So hopefully you guys got to the end as well. And if you did and you like the content, subscribe. Super Coach. Just talking real good footy, quality football, rugby league. If you love your rugby league content, subscribe. Instagram, Spotify, Apple. Getting stuck into all of that great stuff as well. Riley, where can they find you, brother?
All the socials will just be at Green Palm Sports, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want. go have a look if you want. If not, all good.
Jakey, what about yourself, brother?
Mate, I'm just on Instagram doing my best. I'm just on there, and I enjoy doing this stuff, mate. So thanks again for the collab, and I look forward to seeing how it all goes.
Alrighty, and guys, just a quick one as well before we wrap up. Sportshed TV charity match, the 22nd of February at Ringrose Park, 3 p.m. should be the kickoff for that one. Myself, I'll be in there. A bunch of your favourite content creators as well. Sav, who we do the Supercoach podcast, as well as a bunch of others will be in there as well. So make sure you go ahead and buy your tickets. The link will be in the description. We'll see you guys in the next one.